What's up, guys? Artem MMA Analysis here. Going to be talking about UFC Fight Night Lemos versus Andrade, and man, this is actually a pretty interesting fight night. To be fair, not the most exciting, but we do have interesting fights like Dean Barry versus Mike the Goat Jackson. Aoriqileng making his 135-pound debut. I believe that this fight is at 135, not 125. And Tyson Pedro versus Villanueva. Tyson Pedro making his return after a long time. And the main event, I would say, is pretty good as well. I believe Alexander Romanov versus Tanner Boser has been cancelled, which kind of sucks. We've got Guida in the co-main. So unfortunately, a very small fight night card, I guess you could say, on the 11 fights. I think we had 14 fights last weekend. But anyway, let's just get straight into the fights. And yeah, I'm going to make my predictions. It's been a pretty crazy week for me, but I'm going to be making my predictions anyway, obviously. So let's just get straight into it. Alright, to get into the first fight of the night, we've got Dean Barry versus Mike Jackson. Dean Barry has actually been signed to the UFC since he was 3-1, but unfortunately this fight wasn't really able to materialize. He was meant to have a couple of UFC fights scheduled with Mike Jackson in 2021, never really quite worked out, so he took a fight on very short notice against Drew Lipton, who was 6-30, and knocked him out in about 20 seconds, as you do, I guess, to build up the record a little bit. So Dean Barry actually been signed to the UFC for a very long time, making his debut against Mike Jackson. I will be picking Dean Barry to win, and I will be picking Dean Barry to win by KO. But, like, the thing is, I don't think a win over Mike Jackson is going to prove that Dean Barry is ready for the UFC. Yes, Mike Jackson may be the greatest fighter of all time. Yes, Mike Jackson may be the greatest boxer of all time. Yes, Mike Jackson may have potentially the greatest win of all time over CM Punk. But at the same time, like, what I'm really trying to say here is I don't know if Dean Barry beating Mike Jackson is still going to prove to me that he is a UFC level as an inexperienced guy. Yes, he's got a good win over Abdullah Al-Bashiri, but since then Abdullah Al-Bashiri's been on a pretty terrible run. I think he's lost a couple of fights since then, and Mike Jackson is just the GOAT, man. He's got really good boxing. He's actually very good MMA photographer, actually very good for MMA media, really, and now he's stepping in the cage again. I don't know why he got let back in, but Dean Barry by KO is the pick. Straight up though, to be honest, it's pretty interesting how widespread the odds are. Yes, I know that Mike Jackson is 0-1, technically 1-1, but yeah, I don't know if Dean Barry's going to look like a minus 1200 favorite when the time the fight starts. But yeah, I'll be picking Dean Barry to win. But once again, I just don't know how much this is really going to prove to me of Dean Barry's skill set really in the UFC. So it's interesting moving forward, but I think Dean Barry will win his UFC debut here. And moving on to the next fight, we've got Marcin Prachnio versus Phillipe Lins. I've seen a lot of people talking about how suspect Marcin Prachnio's chin is, but let's talk about Phillipe Lins' potentially suspect chin as well. Both guys have 5 losses on their record, but both of those guys have 4 KO losses on their record. So both guys with potentially suspect chin. I don't think it's just Marcin Prachnio with a suspect chin. I feel like Marcin Prachnio is a little bit more like Miguel Baeza, where he's just very hittable and doesn't really have the greatest striking defense in the world. Marcin Prachnio, very good karate sort of style, kickboxing. And I don't think that this fight is going to be taking place on the ground as well. Should probably point that out. Phillipe Lins, though, had a very good run back a couple of years ago, where he beat Josh Copeland to win $1 million in the PFL 2018-2019 tournament, I believe it was. And he had a great run, but then he made his UFC debut against Andrei Arlovski, lost a decision, as a lot of these new up-and-coming guys are. And then he got knocked out pretty clean by Tanner Boser, who was meant to fight up on this card, but he pulled out against Romanov. And anyway, moving on, Marcin Prachnio has gone on a little bit of a win streak. I feel like he saved his UFC career. Got knocked out by Sam Alvey, got knocked out by Magomed Ankalaev, got knocked out by Mike Rodriguez. But then he beat Khalil Roundtree, and he knocked out, or TKO'd Villanueva. You know what? I feel like Prachnio is going to win this one, but I wouldn't be betting this fight with a lot of confidence. I feel like potentially fight doesn't go the distance because both guys do have knockout losses on their resume. Both guys have been knocked out in the past. Marcin Prachnio doesn't have the greatest striking defense in the world. I'm going to be going Prachnio by KO in this one here, and Phillipe Lins is dropping down to 205 pounds. He wasn't really the biggest heavyweight anyway, so I feel like the weight cut should be okay for him anyway, but I will be going with Marcin Prachnio to win, probably by KO really in this one. Moving up the card, we've got Aoriqileng versus Cameron Else, and I can confirm that I believe that Tapology is wrong. I don't think that this fight is taking place at Flyweight. I do believe that this fight is taking place upper weight class at Bantamweight, as the UFC does say so themselves. So I will probably be trusting them. I do believe that this fight is taking place up at Bantamweight anyway. I've seen multiple sources kind of say that Aoriqileng is moving upper weight class, where he has found success in the past. He moved down to Flyweight in the UFC and has had two very entertaining fights, in my opinion, against Jeff Molina and Cody Jourdain. But now he's going to be moving up to bantamweight, and he's taking on Cameron Else. And a very interesting little fact about Cameron Else, I guess you could say, is that Cameron Else holds a win over a guy that I think most of you will know in Paddy Pimblett, which is pretty crazy. He actually submitted Paddy Pimblett in 35 seconds. That sound was my dog. I've got a pug. She makes a lot of noise when she breathes. Yeah, anyway, so ever since then, though, Cameron Else really wasn't fighting the highest level of competition, and then he took a fight against Kyler Phillips. Didn't quite work out, and now he's taking Aoriqileng. I do believe that Cameron Else is going to be searching for a takedown in this fight, and I do think he's going to be trying to get the takedown on Aoriqileng, but Aoriqileng's going to be defending the takedown and just having a really good time on the feet. I think Aoriqileng does have really good striking, and I think he's going to put on a pretty good striking display in this one here. I do really like Aoriqileng as a fighter. I do think that if he loses, he might get cut from the UFC, but I do really like watching Aoriqileng fights. Both of his fights in the UFC so far have been very exciting, so I will be picking Aoriqileng to win a decision in this one here by putting on a pretty good striking performance. Cameron Else, though, I feel like his opportunity to win the fight would definitely be trying to get the fight to the ground and using some jiu-jitsu for a submission, but I'm going to be trusting Aoriqileng to keep the fight on the feet and putting on a very good performance striking wise in this one here. And moving up, we've got Tyson Pedro versus EK Villanueva. I will be picking Tyson Pedro on this one, but I think minus 500 as a favorite is pretty heavy, considering he hasn't actually fought for about 3.5 years now, which is crazy. He's going to be almost 31 years old by the time this fight rolls around, but he is going to be fighting a much older, and in my opinion, a guy that hasn't really shown to be UFC level in EK Villanueva. EK Villanueva has got really good power in the hands, but I do think that Tyson Pedro is just going to be a little bit too good for him. He also does have a really good win over Paul Craig from about 5 years ago, which has actually aged pretty well in my opinion. But EK Villanueva, his last 5 fights, he's gone 1-4 with a loss to Chase Sherman, which hasn't aged well, a loss to Jourdain Wright, which hasn't aged too well either, I guess. He did beat Vinicius Mejia, but then he lost to Marcin Prachnio, who's on this card as well, and Nick Nagi Moreno in the first round. So I think that we're just kind of using Tyson Pedro to get him another shot at the UFC after a 3.5 year layoff, and I will think Tyson Pedro is going to win this fight in a stand-up fight. I think he will knock out EK Villanueva in the first couple of rounds. Alright, this next one we've got Dwight Grant versus Sergey Khandozhko. Sergey Khandozhko hasn't fought for about 2.5 years, but I am going to be trusting him to get a win in this fight here. Dwight Grant, on the other hand, has been actually a lot more active, especially for an older guy. He has fought 5 months ago, and then he fought about 11 months ago as well with a win over Stefan Stikulic. And I do predict that this fight is going to take place on the feet. I think both the guys are primary kickboxers, but Sergey Khandozhko does actually have a little bit of wrestling that he can lean into if he needs to, and that is kind of why I'm picking Sergey Khandozhko. I do think he's a little bit more of a well-rounded fighter. I do think that the only real chance of Dwight Grant getting the win in this fight really is to get a KO, because Dwight Grant does, in my opinion, probably does. There's an argument to be made that he probably does have more power than Sergey, but he hasn't got a KO in about 3 years, which is when he knocked out Carlo Pedersoli. Since then, he did actually get knocked out by D-Rod about 1.5 years ago himself. Sergey, though, has fought a couple of times in the UFC. He did beat Roster McMahon, the hairiest man to ever step foot in the octagon, but since then, Roster McMahon's gone on like a 5-fight losing streak, and prior to that, he was fighting against pretty good opponents on the regional scene. His one loss coming to Rustam Kabalov 2.5 years ago, as I said. Very long layoff for Sergey. I am going to be trusting that he's going to have made the improvements, and at minus 125, those odds are actually that close. I do think that he's actually a pretty good slight favourite to have a little bit of confidence in to win this fight. He's actually also a lot more experienced than Dwight Grant, considering Dwight Grant is almost 38 years old. It's pretty crazy. He's only had 15 MMA fights compared to Sergey Khandozhko's, was it 34 MMA fights? I will be picking Sergey Khandozhko to get the win in this one here, thank you. Alright, moving on, we've got Jourdain Wright versus Marc-Andre Barriault. I'm going with the underdog in Jourdain Wright, and I'm actually a little bit surprised that we do have Jourdain Wright as the underdog, and I guess it kind of does make a little bit of sense, as Jourdain Wright really hasn't had, I guess, as impressive of a UFC run as I guess a lot of people potentially expected from him. He did knock out Villanueva in his UFC debut, but and a good win over Gabriel Chico as well, actually worth noting that he's the one that fought on Eagle FC recently against Rashad Evans. That's the name I was looking for. Anyway, got knocked out by Joaquin Buckley, beat Jamie Pickett by KO, and then got knocked out by Bruno Silva. But Bruno Silva's a very good kickboxer himself. I feel like Jourdain Wright really is round one or go home, and I feel like Marc-Andre Barriault stepping in on short notice, considering he only got knocked out very quickly only a couple of months ago. I do really respect the fact that he's decided to get back in there and potentially like redeem a loss there, but I feel like Jourdain Wright's probably not the fighter that you really want to go up against coming off of KO losses. Jourdain Wright does have KO power. He does have a very good karate base as well. The fight's taking place at 190, so I guess on the side of Marc-Andre Barriault taking the fight on short notice, he doesn't have to cut as much weight. The more well-rounded fighter is definitely Marc-Andre Barriault, no doubt about that, but I do think that Jourdain Wright really is going to put on the pressure and apply his round one, crazy round one style on Marc-Andre Barriault, and he also did actually manage to hurt Bruno Silva in that first round as well, before he did lose. He did lose, but he did hurt Bruno Silva, and Bruno Silva is a very good kickboxer. In fact, he put on a pretty decent performance against Alex Pereira in his last fight. So I will be going Jourdain Wright here by knockout in this one. I do agree with the majority of Tapology, but I do find it quite interesting that the odds seem to have flipped. I think Jourdain Wright might have opened as the favourite actually, and now Marc-Andre Barriault, we're getting him as the favourite. Jourdain Wright, slight plus money there. I do like the underdog Jourdain Wright. I feel like if he's going to win, he's really going to win in the first or second round by KO. I don't see him winning a decision here. If the fight's going the distance, I think Marc-Andre Barriault takes it. But if the fight ends inside the distance, I will be predicting Jourdain Wright by knockout to get the job done here against the guy who got knocked out pretty recently against Chidi Njokwani and Marc-Andre Barriault. And up the card, I feel like we've got a potential fight of the night on this one here. Not really the greatest card in the world, but I feel like if there is a fight that you should be excited for, I think that it probably should be this one. Charles Jourdain versus Lando Vannata should be a very exciting fight. Lando Vannata got his way into the UFC by taking on Tony Ferguson. Surging Tony Ferguson on short notice as well. Absolutely insane story, but since then he has gone 5-5 in the UFC so far, and he actually is a very entertaining guy. He's a very entertaining fighter. I see him commenting literally everywhere on Instagram. He's very active on social media, and he's very active in the fight too. He does throw a lot of techniques that a lot of the fans like to watch. He does throw spinning kicks. He has knocked out John Makdessi with a spinning kick to the head. But moving on from that, I will be picking Charles Jourdain to win the fight by a decision. I do think that the fight probably will go all 3 rounds. If not, I think we'll probably will see the fight into the second or third rounds. And Charles Jourdain, I think he's just going to keep a little bit more of an active pace over Lando Vannata. We have seen in the past Lando Vannata does seem to tire out a little bit as the third round goes on, especially in a very high-paced fight, which this one probably will be. I do think this is going to be a very high-paced fight, and Charles Jourdain put on a very good performance over Andre Ewell, who, to be fair, isn't in the UFC anymore, but in my opinion, that was still a great fight for Charles Jourdain. Really put on a great performance, and he was actually going to take on, short notice, he was going to take on Ilia Topuria, which would have been a pretty crazy fight as well. But anyway, moving on, I think this is going to be great. I do feel like the man landing the heavier shots will be Charles Jourdain. I feel like both guys will be throwing a very high pace, but I think that the guy with the cardio and the durability that we have seen is Charles Jourdain. I think that I can trust Charles Jourdain to take the shots of Lando Vannata, as long as it's not a spinning head kick to a decision. I think we're going to see Charles Jourdain win a decision in this fight here, in a very entertaining fight. My pick, personally, for fight of the night, and I will be going Jourdain by decision in this one here. And now we've got another fight which a lot of people are really excited to see, Mudaerji Sue versus Manel Kape. I believe these guys are both top 15 in the flyweight division in the UFC, and for good reason. Both guys are pretty good, but Sue Mudaerji really has not fought the level of competition that Manel Kape has in the UFC. A win over Zaruk Adashev, Malcolm Gordon, and Andrei Sukumtar really, to me, doesn't match a win over Zalga Sumagulov, Ode Osborne, a split decision loss to Matheus Nicolau where a lot of people disagree with the decision, and then a decision loss to Alejandro Pantoja in his UFC debut, which again some people disagree with the decision, but I do think Pantoja won that fight. But I do think there's an argument to be made for Kape to win the fight over Matheus Nicolau. But moving on from that, man, I feel like Manel Kape has got really good power in the hands. He did time a really good flying knee to knock out Ode Osborne. I feel like maybe when the UFC was throwing him in there in the UFC at the start, they were maybe throwing him a little bit too deep for the UFC debut, but now he's kind of settled a little bit more. He's got a couple of wins on his record, and now he's kind of building up, and he really is a very good prospect to watch in the flyweight division, in my opinion. Him and Mokaev Muhammad, or Muhammad Mokaev, are really exciting fighters to watch. But I think Sue Mudaerji is pretty good too. But one thing that is very worth noting, I think, is that he actually got signed to the UFC off a loss to Halban Ma. He got signed off a loss. He got submitted there, and then he got submitted in his debut. Very much worth noting that all four of Sue Mudaerji's losses have come by submission. All 4 of them. And Manel Kape does happen to have 5 submission wins on his record, so potentially we could be seeing a Manel Kape submission on this one here, but he really hasn't submitted anyone in a very, very long time. But I feel like maybe Sue Mudaerji could be that guy, but I'm picking Manel Kape. I actually do think he's going to get the job done inside the distance. I know the MMA Guru did pick Manel Kape to win a decision. I'm going to be going Manel Kape inside the distance just in general, because I do feel like there's a potential for a submission here. I think Manel Kape might hurt Sue Mudaerji in the feet, but instead of knocking him out and maybe finishing him off with ground and pound, maybe he shoots for a submission and gets like a guillotine or a rear naked choke or something like that over Sue Mudaerji. I'll go Manel Kape, just inside the distance personally by KO or submission in this one here. I think that he's a pretty confident pick. He's a very good prospect, and I feel like potentially, like, with a win here, I feel like we might see him like call out Matheus Nicolau for a rematch or something. I feel like that would be a pretty cool call out. Or maybe he just calls up the division, because I feel like Manel Kape really does have a run in him here. I think he lands with a lot of power. I feel like he does land with more power than Sue Mudaerji is used to. Like Malcolm Gordon, I don't think is a very powerful striker. Zaruk Adashev is actually a pretty good striker himself, but he was 3-2 in MMA. I mean, I don't really know how that managed to get Sue Mudaerji staying in the top 15. So I'm just really going to be going with Manel Kape here, but this kind of really does kind of show, notice the pick to Sue Mudaerji because he is a very good fighter. It kind of does show that if a win over Zaruk Adashev, Malcolm Gordon, and Andrei Sukumtar is enough to get you into the top 15, I really can't wait for the UFC to sign more flyweight fighters. That's what Dana White's Contender Series 22 is for. They're going to be signing so many flyweight fighters. I'm predicting so many flyweight fights on that series, man. I really cannot wait for it. Anyway, moving on. Alright, moving on. We've got Maycee Barber versus Montana De La Rosa. It still annoys me. It still annoys me so much how Maycee Barber managed to get the nod over Miranda Maverick, where it's so clear. It's so clear that she didn't win that fight. I just hate how that happened. Literally on MMA decisions, although very unreliable source in my opinion, no one scored that fight for Maycee Barber. I just don't understand. It just annoys me so much. Rant over though. I am picking Maycee Barber to win the fight. Montana De La Rosa, she does actually have pretty good wrestling herself, and I feel like she is a little bit better than what her record does suggest. But she, I don't think she's going to be able to take down Maycee Barber and smother her like Montana De La Rosa is probably game planning to do. I feel like Maycee Barber has shown good enough defensive wrestling awareness, although she did get taken down at times by Miranda Maverick in that fight, and even with Roxanne Modafferi, she tore her ACL, I think, or something like that, mid-fight, and then was taken down and dominated by Roxanne in that one there. But for Montana De La Rosa, I feel like that's probably going to have to be her game plan. I feel like Montana really is going to have to rely on her wrestling to get this one done. And I feel like there is definitely a path to victory for Montana here, but I will be picking Maycee Barber to win. I do see her kind of as a prospect. It just really annoys me how she should be on a 3-fight losing streak right now, but she's not. So, Yeah, that's what it is. I really don't see. I'm really not too excited for this fight, as you can tell, unfortunately. But it is what it is, man. I will be picking Maycee Barber to win a decision here. I feel like even if De La Rosa does win the fight very clearly, Maycee Barber will probably still steal a split decision anyway. Yeah, moving on. Yeah, I think Montana De La Rosa is better than our record suggests, but I will be picking Maycee Barber to win that fight. Alright, man, we move up to the co-main event, and I've come to the point of recording, and I'm still unsure. I feel like if I picked Claudio Puelles, Clay Guida would put on a really good wrestling performance to a decision, maybe even submit him later in the third round. Or, if I picked Clay Guida, I feel like Claudio Puelles would somehow find a KO like Leonardo Santos almost did in the first round of their fight. Or, Claudio Puelles would get some sort of crazy submission off his back, maybe even take down Clay Guida and get a crazy submission on top. But I don't really think that's going to happen. I really kind of do like Clay Guida, but the one thing that's really kind of holding me back is just the fact that Clay Guida is 40 years old. I know that he has looked pretty good in his last couple of fights, but he did almost get finished against Leonardo Santos on the feet there. He did lose a split decision to split decision Madsen. And he did actually beat Michael Johnson by decision, and Clay Guida really does have a great wrestling game, and he really does like to put on a very heavy, a very high pace, and he does definitely have a decent amount of following behind him. He has had quite a few co-main event slots recently, as you would have noticed, which is pretty cool for Clay Guida. I really do like that he's still fighting at 40 years of age, a former Strikeforce champion, and he's still in it. He's still beating, and he's still fighting up-and-coming guys, or older guys than Leonardo Santos. I really want to pick Claudio Puelles because I feel like the guy that I feel like at this point in their career that has the highest ceiling is Claudio Puelles. I feel like a win over Clay Guida, as they're only 26 years old, would kind of put him up there in the lightweight division and maybe have him fighting guys like Vince Pichel moving forward. But I just don't see Claudio Puelles winning this fight. Oh, I'm going to be picking Clay. Oh, no. I'm going to pick Clay Guida, and I'm going to pick Clay Guida decision or like a third round submission like he did over Leonardo Santos or a TKO. Clay Guida really does have good submission defense, and Claudio Puelles' way to win, in my opinion, is a submission. Clay Guida's also got really good wrestling. I feel like he's going to have a good enough wrestling defense to defend the takedowns of Claudio Puelles, and I don't think that Claudio Puelles is that striker. I just don't see Claudio Puelles being the guy to even like land a heavy shot over Clay Guida. He did take a very long layoff between the Phillipe Silva fight and the Marcus Mariano fight, about a year and a half, and then he took about 2 years off between the Jourdain Levitt fight and the Marcus Mariano fight to make improvements. He is only 26 years old. I feel like this is actually a very good spot for him to potentially build his name up with a good win. But I'm gonna pick Clay Guida. I do genuinely believe that the UFC wants Claudio Puelles to win though, because they are kind of building up the Latin America scene. They're building a performance institute in Mexico, I believe. Claudio Puelles did fight in the Ultimate Fighter Latin America Season 3 when he was only 19 years old, which is pretty crazy. It's not even on this list, but he does have a win over Marcelo Rojo, which has aged pretty well in my opinion. He did lose to Martin Bravo back in the day as well, but that was his debut in the UFC when he's probably only 21 years old. But since then he has won a couple of good fights, really. A good win over Jourdain Levitt, which has aged pretty well, and a fight that really wasn't that exciting. A good knee bar win over Chris Gucci-Schmacher, but I feel like his chance to win over Clay Guida is definitely to get a submission. I feel like Clay Guida probably does have the stand-up advantage at this point. He's been fighting in mixed martial arts for so long. He has developed a competent stand-up game to be better than Claudio Puelles on the feet, in my opinion. I feel like Clay Guida's just going to be non-stop. Clay Guida's got really good cardio. I think he's got better cardio than Claudio Puelles. So we'll be going Clay Guida to win a decision or like a late third round finish. Clay Guida will be my pick. I think at the moment he's a slight favourite to win the fight, but he opened as a pretty big underdog. I was pretty big on Claudio Puelles to start, but the more I think about it, the more I look into it, I will be picking Guida. But I will not be surprised if Puelles wins. I feel like this is definitely a fight to not bet. Maybe you could bet like an over 1.5 or whatever the over is. Maybe it's an over 2.5, but I just really wouldn't be throwing any money at this fight. I feel like this is one that you can sit and relax and just watch the fight knowing that you've got no money on it. Unless you have thrown down at Clay Guida at plus 150 or even just plus money in general, maybe Clay Guida would be a good plus money bet, but I feel like we're just going to see Clay Guida close as a very slight favourite And that's it, really. I was really not sure. I'm genuinely not sure. I really wouldn't be recommending, from my knowledge, my personal knowledge, I wouldn't personally tell anyone to go out and bet on this fight. That's how not confident I am on this one. But I will be picking Clay Guida. It's 40-year-old to bet 26-year-old Claudio, which is absolutely insane. But I will be going with Clay Guida here. Moving up into the main event, we've got Amanda Lemos versus Jessica Andrade. To be fair, probably not the best main event we have had this year, but it is what it is. I'd still say it's still two very highly ranked opponents together. I guess I think Amanda Lemos is like ranked number 11 in the strawweight division, and Jessica Andrade is the number 1 ranked flyweight right now. She is coming off a win over Cynthia Calvillo after losing to Valentina Shevchenko in a pretty dominant effort for Valentina in that one there. Part of that show, she did knock out Katlyn Chookagian in the first round, lost a split decision to Rosa Namajunas, and did get knocked out by Zhang Weili. She is 2-3 in her last 5, but she's still a very elite level fighter in my opinion. And she had a relatively okay run at 125, but now she's making a return to 115, where she has found success in the past, and where she has actually been the champion in the past. Jessica Andrade, she beat Rosa Namajunas by that slam, with that pretty brutal slam, to become the strawweight champion. And now she's only 30 years old. She's not even 31 yet, and I feel like she's already got so much experience behind her. This is a 32nd fight, which is absolutely insane. We don't really see a lot of female fighters with this much experience, which is pretty crazy, in my opinion anyway. Amanda Lemos is 11-1. Her one loss came to a lady that recently fought Chris Cyborg in Leslie Smith. Defeated her with standing elbows, but since then she did bounce back and is on a pretty decent win streak herself. But her wins really aren't as impressive as the fighters Jessica Andrade has been mixing her name in there with. Montserrat Ruiz doesn't really impress me too much. Angela Hill as well, split decision to Angela Hill even. Levina Souza, Mizuki Inoue, and Miranda Granger, not really the same ladies that Jessica Andrade has been fighting over the last few years. I know that I have seen a couple of people like Amanda Lemos' chances in this one, but I really do have a pretty decent amount of confidence in Andrade to win this fight here. Like the ladies that she has been fighting, you go all the way back to 2017 even. You got 2017 Angela Hill, the 2017 Joanna Jędrzejczyk, 2017 Claudia Godella, Tisha Torres, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, the Rose Namajunas when she won the belt, Weili Zhang, Rose Namajunas again, Katlyn Chookagian, Valentina Shevchenko, and Cynthia Calvillo. That these are just so much more elite level opponents in my opinion than the ladies that Amanda Lemos has been fighting. And Amanda Lemos is almost 35 years old as well. I just don't think that she's going to be able to be in there with Jessica Andrade, who is very short. I will admit that she's very short at 5'1" with only 62-inch reach, but she's used to that, man. She's fought so many more rangy strikers than Amanda Lemos is at 5'4" with a 65-inch reach. I just think that Jessica Andrade has got the experience. I think she's seen literally everything that Amanda Lemos could bring. Amanda Lemos does have very good striking herself, but I just don't think that she's going to be able to catch a girl like Jessica Andrade, who really is, in my opinion, quite elite, and does have a pretty decent chance at beating a few more of these top 10 strawweights. I do think that strawweight probably is where she's going to find a lot more success. I feel like flyweight was a very good shot, and I do commend her for that flyweight opportunity that she did take, but I think that down at strawweight is really where she's going to find her most success. So I will be picking Andrade. Inside the distance, I think is pretty fair. We've got 5 rounds to work here. I think Andrade really does have good power in the hands. She showed so much finishing ability in the past over great opponents like Katlyn Chookagian, Rose Namajunas even she finished. And she also finished Cynthia Calvillo on the feet as well. I'm going Andrade inside the distance by KO. Maybe we see a submission, but I just think that Jessica Andrade is just going to be that little bit better kind of everywhere, really. I just don't think that Amanda Lemos is really going to be able to show anything that Jessica Andrade hasn't seen already. So I think it's going to be a great fight, and I will be going with Andrade to win as well.